Jai Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, Namaha Namaha, Hare
Namo
Krishna.
Namaha.
Namaha.
Ekendra Prabhu.
Krishna,
Everything
Krishna.
okay?
I'm seeing your face. My life is good.
Oh my God. Ekendra Das. You want me to read the kirtan?
That would be really good.
Okay, great. Let me see. Okay.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Oh, you stopped so soon. You can go on a little bit more if you want. That was really getting going.
I think I'm exhausting right now.
Okay, you're good. All right. So,
Thanks.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtottara Sati Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, for leading us in kirtan. That was very necessary. And also welcome to everyone for Monday, August 1st, 2022 for Srimad Bhagavatam class. His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami sent me a note earlier this afternoon saying that he was traveling all day today between Paris and Madrid and likely going to need some rest and not going to be able to join us tonight. And I looked it up, and it is in fact a 12-hour trip, either by car or by train. I don't know how he was traveling, but even if he's traveling by plane, that means a lot of traveling. So Hare Krishna. Hopefully he'll be able to join us on Wednesday. So we are reading tonight in the third canto in the 6th chapter, speaking about the universal form. Maitreya Muni is enlightening Vidura about the nature of the universal form and how everything comes out. Tonight we're going to be starting with verse number 32, and very much looking forward to hearing everyone's comments and or questions to make this a full hour's worth of Bhagavat Katha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And if someone would like to lead tonight's closing kirtan, please send me a direct message, and look forward to hearing from you. And I'll be sharing links for this class so you can share those with your friends and we can expand the kirtan. Hare Krishna. So, 3rd canto, 6th chapter, verse number 32. Vishovartanta tasyorvor loka vrittikarir vibaho vaishyas tadut bhavo vartang ninang yah samavartayat. The means of livelihood of all persons, namely production of grains and their distribution to the prajas, was generated from the thighs of the Lord's gigantic form. The mercantile men who take charge of such execution are called Vaishyas. And what I think I'll do is read through the whole purport and then go back and look at the Sanskrit and look at things a little bit closer. So Srila Prabhupada says, human society's means of living is clearly mentioned here as Visha, or agriculture and the business of distributing agricultural products, which involves transport, banking, etc. Industry is an artificial means of livelihood, and large-scale industry especially is the source of all the problems of society. In Bhagavad Gita also, the duties of the Vaishyas who are engaged in Visha are stated as cow protection, agriculture, and business. We have already discussed that the human being can safely depend on the cow and agricultural land for his livelihood. The exchange of produce by banking and transportation is a branch of this type of living. The Vaishyas are divided into many subsections. Some of them are called Kshetri, or landowners. Some are called Krishana, or land tillers. Some of them are called Tilavanik, or grain raisers. Some are called Gandhavanik, or merchants in spices. And some are called Suvarnavanik, or merchants in gold and banking. The Brahmanas are the teachers and spiritual masters. The Kshatriyas protect the citizens from the hands of thieves and miscreants, and the Vaishyas are in charge of production and distribution. The Shudras, the unintelligent class of men, who cannot act independently in any of the above-mentioned activities, are meant for serving the 3 higher classes for their livelihood. Formerly, the Brahmanas were given all the necessities of life by the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, because they had no time to spend making a living. The Kshatriyas would collect taxes from the Vaishyas and Shudras, but the Brahmanas were exempt from paying income tax or land revenue. That system of human society was so nice that there were no political, social, and economic upheavals. The different castes, or Varna classifications, are therefore essential for maintaining a peaceful human society. Om Ajnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shulakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Bandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savathutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vishovartanta tasyor var Loka vritti karir vibaho Vaishyas tad udbhavo vartang Nrinam yaha samavartayat. So Visha, this whole section, of course, is the manifestation of the universal form, how the universe comes into being according to the sages and the view of the Bhagavatam, and the various class divisions in society are being described, how they occupy a certain portion of that form, and that's how we get things as they are today, more or less, coming down throughout vast stretches of time. And this particular verse talks about how the economics of the universal form, the economics of the universe itself. The first word, visha, means of living by production and distribution. It also means material opulence or riches, apparently. Although the word looks curiously like a credit card company, we know it's not that. The word Vaishya is derived from Visha, just like Vaishnava is derived from Vishnu. So the Vaishyas are the ones who are in charge of the material opulence or riches of everybody else. And then avartanta, which means here to either generate, to bring about, to cause to arise, how things happen, how the Visha gets there in the first place. And then vrittikarihi. Vrittikarihi, I made some notes on this. It literally means maker of livelihoods. Vritti means either business or subsistence or how you maintain yourself. Different kinds of vritti are talked about in the Bhagavatam and also in Chaitanya Charitamrita, like the unsha vritti. I always thought that was an interesting one. Unsha vritti means kapota vritti. Kapota vritti means the means of livelihood of the pigeon. That's supposed to be one way that a sadhu or someone in the renounced order of life can maintain himself, by taking the cast aside grains from the agricultural field like the pigeons do. Kapota vritti. And this word today that happens in this verse, vritti kari, is similar to vritti karai, which means providing the living facility, how we get the means to live in this world, the function of that. And it's also, I thought it was just maybe anecdotally interesting that the way that the word appears in the context of the poetry of the Sanskrit, it comes out vritti karir, and career sounds suspiciously like career, like livelihood, but that is only coincidental. But coincidentally, the word career, which I was interested in, it comes from supposedly our English word career comes from the Latin carus, which means like wheeled vehicle, like someone's taking their bullock cart to market. They're taking their car. So instead of the slogan, what's in your wallet, it's more like what's in your bullock cart, what is the real wealth. And then what's the next word here? I believe it's vibho. Yeah, which the Bo means the Lord, the Almighty, the Supreme, the Great. Prabhupada once, anecdotally, he named a husband and wife of his disciples Vibhu. The man was Vibhu, and the wife's name was Anu, with his transcendental sense of humor. I'm curious to know how that marriage worked out, but it's very funny the way he named them. But all these different parts of the Virat Rupa, all these divisions of the universal form's body, all these features, they're all coming from a person. And that's coming to us again and again. That point keeps coming home to us as we read this section, that this is the logical way that all things in our own experience develop. Someone has an idea, they make a plan, they carry it out. It starts with a person, it starts with an idea. And then in the course of carrying it out, there has to be raw materials and some time and some capital and labor. But this is how the universe comes into existence from the viewpoint of the demigods, from the viewpoint of the sages. And I think I've mentioned before, like for us tiny human beings crawling around on this little planet, Earth, it's like a fruit fly on a ripe banana in the supermarket being explained to how the store came into being and what the supply chain is. Our ability to even grasp these things, at least my ability, is frightfully limited. But the contrast is that in our contemporary society, we're not told these things. We're not taught that the universal form is the source of all the divisions of society. We're left to guess. And those who are well educated are supposedly better able to guess, but even their best guess is not so great. Like I once heard Sariputta Prabhu making the point that Sariputta Prabhu had his PhD in statistical mechanics. He knew mathematics very well. I've sat behind him in Bhagavatam classes that he wasn't giving. I remember in the San Diego temple. And sometimes when the class is not so enlivening, if you're in school, you might doodle in your notebook. I happened to notice that Sariputta Prabhu was doodling pages full of equations, and it was just a tremendous math thing that he was doing. But he once said that according to information theory, the chances of complex life as we experience it, somehow spontaneously arriving by chance from anything like a less complex form, such as molecules, is what he says is 1 in 1 to the power of 167, or that chance is 1 with 167 zeros after it. And he said that this is why mathematicians are more difficult to convince of Darwinian theory than biologists are. But anyway, our experience in this world is that biological life comes from other biological life, and this principle is certainly not violated on the highest level, as we're shown here. The form comes from form, life comes from life, and ultimately all life comes from an ultimate living source. We don't propose anything illogical or unreasonable. And the Bhagavatam, it operates on so many different levels, because it not only describes our own experience, but it really gives the why behind all the manifestations that we see, and a lot of manifestations that we don't see. Typically what we hear in the news or what we're taught in school, especially in contemporary Western education, the research that goes on to get us the information, it goes on at the level of what is going on. This reaches almost an art form in the world of the internet, where what you see described as clickbait. Some fantastic thing happened. That's the what, and you have to click here to find out what happens. But the how and the why is usually considered to be completely off the table. It's like, well, isn't it enough for you that this fantastic thing happened? And for some of us, the answer is no. Or the how and the why is sort of relegated to the fields of religion or philosophy or something like that. And most people, they don't like the idea of God creating things. They don't like the idea of intelligent design or intelligent creation or purposeful creation by a person, because that would just spoil all of our fun, especially if you're really wanting to control and enjoy things in the material world. And if in the back of your mind somewhere you think that someone else created everything and they might have a plan for everything that goes against my controlling idea, that's just that's just unacceptable. So I will look for any alternate explanation of ultimate cause I can find, like maybe there is no ultimate cause or a million other permutations of godless theories. Anyway, this verse says very clearly, Vibho, that this is coming from the universal form, which is a form of Krishna, and it has a purpose, it has a meaning, it's based on a person, it's based on a desire, there's a design to it, and that is that. So moving on through the Sanskrit here. Next is the word Visha. Visha, which we discussed earlier, means, or Vaishyas, really. It comes from the word Visha, and it refers to the mercantile community. And mercantile essentially means anything related to trade or commerce, means of living by production and distribution, as Prabhupada translates Visha. Anything making and selling, a field of work that has to calculate profit and loss and supply and demand, businessmen. And then Udbhava, which it means you see the word Udbhava a lot in the chapters of the Bhagavatam in the 9th canto, where the dynasties coming from this and that king are described. It means generation or creation, appearance or birth, and things appearing from other things, like the word Krodha Bhavati Samoha. Bhavati is similar to Udbhava. It means one thing leads to another, or Evam Bhavati, how it happens. This is how it happens. So this is how the Vaishyas came to be the class of living entity they are. They came originally from this portion of the universal form, the thighs, which we'll hear. And then Vartam. Vartam is also related to Vritti, I found out, or means of livelihood. And the Vaishyas, it turns out, are the economic engine of the universal form, or how things go. The Brahmanas teach, as Prabhupada talks about later in the purport, because Kshatriyas, they protect and they keep order. The Shudras assist everybody else. And the Vaishyas are in charge of production and distribution. Next would be Nrinam. So now we get from the universal form down to us. As above and so below, this aspect of Krishna's personality manifests in this portion of the universal form, and it comes down to us throughout. Well, Krishna says, Chaturvarnyam Maya Shristam. This is what's being discussed here in today's verse, and all these verses that we're hearing about the universal form. Nrinam means the people in general, or humanity at large, or humankind, you and me. And it's because of this original, vast, inconceivable to our tiny brains arrangement by the Lord in his universal form, all these character traits, the tendencies, modes of life, they become manifest in all the infinite living entities like us, at least human beings, within the material universes. It all comes down ultimately to us. And it's been coming down steadily forever. So the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, they make up what we know as the body of society, at least the Vedic presentation of the body of society. And when there's harmony in that body, just like when there's harmony in our own body, we say that's healthy. We call it a happy society. But when things are out of balance, as they are now, with mostly Shudras and a few Vaishyas, as Prabhupada said, and practically no Brahmins or Kshatriyas, we call that a state of societal upheaval that he mentions later in the purport. The social body is in a diseased condition. Things are out of balance. And it benefits us to know these things, because Prabhupada initially had the idea to create a class of Brahmins. He told reporters, I have come to give you a brain. Your society is headless. In other words, it's like this body moving around with legs and going somewhere, but no vision, no plan, just moving, running here and there. And so Prabhupada wanted to create a class of Brahmins so that the society, human society, would have some vision, have some ability to see where it's going and where it should go. where it should go. Krishna arranged this system, and the system works when it's aligned with Krishna's purposes. People can make genuine progress in their lives individually and as a society as a whole when their understanding and when their activities are really aligned with Krishna's purposes for this whole universal machine, which is like this vast machine. Just as the body, our own bodies, are yantra rudhani maya, the soul sits on the chariot of this body like a machine, and it can move from point A to point B. So in the larger scale, the macro view, the universal form, or the universe itself, is like this huge organism populated by all these tiny little living entities. And within that universal form, if society is in its proper healthy condition, everybody within that can make progress towards a real happy future. I mean, people want that for themselves. They don't just want to live their lives like, single-celled organisms, not knowing what's going on, just kind of, blindly eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, although that's becoming more prevalent as well. But real happiness comes when you know why you're here and what you're supposed to do, and then you do it and you get an actual outcome. It's just like a car. If your car's wheels are not aligned properly, then your tires are going to wear out really fast. Your steering is going to be difficult. Your mileage will suffer. You'll be fighting the wheel all the time, and you'll be in anxiety all the time. And this is what the state of society that we have now. There's constant hot and cold wars and anxiety and upheaval, and what to speak of climate problems, all because of this point that everything is not aligned according to the desire of the Lord. So now let's look at the purport and see what Prabhupada says. But first, I think there's something in the chat box. Let's see what's there before we move on. Panchatattva Prabhu has very wisely and cleverly, charmingly said, instead of one career, I have careered in all directions. Thank you very much, Panchatattva Prabhu. Oh, Saraswati Mata says, we understand that at present, most of the population consists of Shudras, but some of those Shudras are successful businessmen. In fact, the richest 1% own about 40% of the total world's wealth. How do you explain this success of Shudras if they are meant to only serve the other three castes? Well, Prabhupada did say there are a few Vaishyas, and those few Vaishyas know what to do. And they're you could probably do a mini research project and arrive at, in terms of what the percentage is here, arrive at the maybe there's 1% of people that are Vaishyas and they know how to make money off the other 99 and own the 40%. But it's not that everybody's a Shudra. There are a few Vaishyas. But because there's no Brahmins giving clear guidance as to the goal, and because there are no Kshatriyas keeping standards, making sure people are properly engaged and protecting others from being cheated and pilfered and thieved from, then you get this very out of balance picture, and the social body is like this grotesque thing that, it's coming at you, you better get out of the way. So that's my understanding. Panchatattva Prabhu says maybe past pious activities. Sure, it would certainly require past pious activities. Janmaishwarya Shruta Shribihi. That's the results of past pious activities, is that you're either rich, really good looking, influential, or smart. So it would have to be that, sure. But you have to say also that we get our present positions due to our previous activities. And if our present activities aren't any good, then our opulence will not last. The picture of society that is being painted in this, in Prabhupada's speaking of a classic human society in the real Vedic sense of the word, it means sustainable. It means people are happy. It's not just that we ride on our past pious activities and enjoy like crazy until they run out and to hell with the future. Not at all. We're supposed to be mindful. which I want to speak a little bit about later. Somebody has a hand up. Tulsi Priya, go ahead.
When you were just talking about the richest 1%, I mean, it's kind of a relative thing too, because probably anybody, well, maybe not anybody, but a huge majority of people in the United States are in, let's say, the top 10% compared to a lot of the rest of the world, even though there are plenty of poor people here. But, even let's say a lower middle class person, they have a standard of living way beyond what you might find in many of the places in the world. So in one sense, everybody is somebody else's 1%, or 10%. The other thing is I was thinking about the richest people in the world, and they're definitely, I mean, the Vaishya mindset is definitely there. You've got Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, who did, Amazon is nothing. It's just like one huge store. Facebook, it purports to be a social media network, but it's really just there to show us ads and whatever, so it's, all of this is very Vaishya-like activity, and they're all the wealthiest people in the world. So even though they may be in fact Shudras, they're certainly behaving like Vaishyas, and people who have had the most influence, somebody like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, they were selling a product, and that had a huge impact on the world. So it's I'm trying to think of other ways that people get rich, besides, like, it used to be oil, that you were providing a service. Yeah, you're selling something, but it's an industry, whereas, Apple computers and Facebook is just about selling you stuff. It doesn't matter what the stuff is. So it seems like it's, very much Vaishya on steroids, but it sort of in some ways passes as a sort of a Brahminical thing, because it's like, oh, we're transforming communities, and we're changing the way people think and do work and all that kind of stuff. So there's that kind of little Brahminical pretense going on that they're doing something that's actually important, but not really.
Yeah, well, I think the key word there is pretense, because if you have a society where there are no Brahmins and there are no Kshatriyas, then even the Vaishyas and Shudras are not really Vaishyas and Shudras. That the real Varnashram, the Daivi Varnashram that Prabhupada goes to great length to describe, it's society as a whole with Brahmins at the head, aimed towards a pure devotional service to Krishna. So when you have that, then you have real Brahmins, real Kshatriyas, real Vaishyas, and real Shudras. We were reading in the first canto, 5th chapter, Narada's instruction to Vyasadeva about even what we hear as fruitive work. As we know, it's karmic activity meant to improve your life. But we hear that even the word fruitive, or some work that's meant to enhance your ability to possess and enjoy in the proper way, it's not even, it can't even bear fruit unless it's connected with the purpose of Krishna in some way. So what we have are really wannabe Vaishyas, wannabe Shudras, just wannabe enjoyers, but without the whole body functioning, with all the parts being healthy. Things are just, like you say, Brahminical in pretense only, Brahminical only as so far as the PR man can make it look so on your commercials. Panchatattva Prabhu, please go ahead.
Of course, persons like Elon Musk are a favorite subject among many people for various reasons. Some people want to be like them. Some people resent their very existence, and this goes on. It really is without anything resembling a varnashram system. Envy between classes is so magnified, and it becomes a terrible field of contention and rivalry. The other thing I was thinking about is that for a person like a Musk or a Carnegie or, some other business magnate who's amassed a tremendous amount of fortune. That's just what we're seeing in this lifetime. And if it is the spending of their pious activities, what does it compare with a person who may spend a lifetime or two trying to perform some Vedic rituals to go to the heavenly planets for some seemingly endless amount of time? And here they are in Kali Yuga getting a brief flash of wealth and material enjoyment only to not know what their next destination is. If it is an exhaustion of pious activities, it's a very quick exhaustion of them.
Yeah, it's like blowing out a big cloud of black smoke through your tailpipe. Right, and because yad yadacharati shrestas tad tadevetaro janaha, because people in general see these examples and see them just burning through their stacks of hundreds, their pious stacks, they think, well, I should do that too. And so things spiral down and down because no one's performing the kind of activities required to get that kind of wealth, to get that kind of pious reaction anymore. They're just burning things, at both ends. So it's very unfortunate because we have no qualified inspirational leadership to show us how to even remain afloat, what to speak of make forward progress. Everybody's just, like I say, blowing smoke. Now, Prabin Prabhu has an argument. Hopefully we can... Argument. Without industrial progress, how can countries defend themselves? Those who advance in these industries will have the upper hand in power and influence. The Hare Krishnas are dependent also on these industries to live or protect themselves. Well, Prabhupada certainly had a vision for the Hare Krishna movement that went far beyond the present day. He envisioned a future in which devotees lived a largely agrarian lifestyle and were able to live, as he says in the purport and all over the Bhagavatam, thanks to the blessings of land and cows. He envisioned a society that was led by brahmanas. And so anything that has to do with industrial enterprise of the kind we see today, its time is just ticking very quickly. We don't know how long it's going to last, but it certainly can't last forever. The gas is not going to last forever. The electricity is not going to last forever. The currency is not going to last forever because these things aren't being properly managed. So he really put the emphasis on starting with Brahminical culture, giving people as broad a sense of Krishna consciousness as is possible, and then with the idea that as the head is the most important part of the body and gives direction to all the other parts, that the other parts would, in Krishna's time scale, gradually again become manifest. That's the sort of future that I understand Prabhupada to be envisioning. So even though what you're saying is true in the immediate here and now, and that argument is, I understand, I've heard it before, but we're asked to have a longer vision of what it really means to be protected, and not only that, but we're supposed to be protected by Krishna ultimately. So we can have, at least those of us who have some transcendental knowledge, we're blessed with the mercy of great souls. We can feel confident that we are protected by Krishna, even if I myself don't sit on top of a munitions factory, for example. And Panchatattva Prabhu astutely points out, what's the use of industrialization if it creates a Mad Max dystopian future? It's already a dystopian present. Yeah, I mean that line of thinking that Prabin Prabhu brings up, it's like a self-perpetuating madness of striving for more and more and bigger bombs and weapons of destruction, just out of fear. That's just the animal drive for self-preservation, which it's cranked up to 11 due to the fact that we have a dystopian society that's fueled by artificial economy. and it cannot last. So I hope that's okay. Is that all right, Praveen Prabhu? I know you don't have access to microphone where you are, but a lot of new messages in the chat box. Let's take one at a time. Saraswati Mata says, it's an eye-opener when we learn that even Rakshasas like Ravana, etc., made better rulers than current Shudra rulers because his citizens had the necessities of life. Yeah, of course, due to his demoniac activities, he lost everything, and yet he had affection for his children and citizens compared to the callous rulers of today that endorse abortion, slaughterhouses, and created such glaring inequality in wealth. Yeah, Duryodhana, good manager. He knew his job. He did it well. There was nothing from our Fortune 500 lack of credentials lacking in Duryodhana. The only problem is he didn't like Krishna. And yeah, good point. Thank you very much for that. Hare Krishna. And Tulsi Priya says, speaking as an American, thousands of our citizens have died in wars, from crime, from preventable diseases like lung cancer and diabetes. So while the country may still stand, how are the citizens actually protected? Yeah, who has the real well wishes of the citizenry? Certainly not the people that are selling you things that will kill you. And Panchatattva Prabhu says, we fight for oil and eventually we'll fight for water. Yes, it's a very grim situation. I was even considering of asking Maharaj when he comes back again to speak on this verse again, because I know of no one who can dismantle the illusions of present-day material prosperity and so-called economy than His Holiness Jayādvaita Maharaj. And I'd love for him to speak on these topics. But here we are. There's a hand up. Tulsi Priya, is that from before or is it a new hand?
That's from before.
Okay. So we can start reading the purport now. Human society's means of living is clearly mentioned here as Visha, or agriculture, and the business of distributing agricultural products, which involves transport, banking, etc. Yes, I think we read the first paragraph, didn't we, of the purport? We can read it again. Industry is an artificial means of livelihood, and large-scale industry especially is the source of all problems of society. I put a big highlighter on that when I was reading this verse. The word industry, it's interesting how it's now used. The root of this word, at least in English, it comes from the Latin industria, which has a connotation of really careful diligence. It has to do with what sounds to me like the mode of goodness, really doing something very, very carefully. Someone who's industrious is someone who does things very carefully, doesn't waste time. But our present day, yes, I know I read all the purport, but now I'm going back through it and looking at it a little bit more closely. What we have now, Prabhupada says that industry is an artificial means of livelihood. So the so-called, industry, it essentially has the few Vaishyas making a profit off everybody else, and everybody else, for them to really buy more things, they have to be more and more lazy, or the opposite of industrious, and increasing their laziness, so that you can sell them more products so they can get more lazy, so you can sell more products. In other words, work for me and buy my products. Don't be industrious. Our educational system does not teach people to be industrious. Rather, better how to become a Shudra, how to work for someone else, how to take a paycheck, and not forget about being industrious. Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaishya are right off the page there. Yeah, and Prabhupada says that we have already discussed that the human being can safely depend on the cow and agricultural land for his livelihood. He said this so many places, that real wealth means land and cows. If you have land If you have cows, you know what to do with them. All the needs of human society can be met. You don't need anything else. Panchatattva Prabhu was talking about the drive for unnecessary necessities, or maybe Tulsi Priya, or maybe both of you. But yeah, that's the whole business of industry, is to create some gadget that will fill some perceived need. It's like, oh, if I have one of those, then I don't have to stand over a sink peeling things with a single blade. I can, put in this thing, and within seconds, I have a box for an item of this nature saying, does any job in 10 seconds or less. So if that doesn't breed further laziness, I don't know what does. And then in the second paragraph of this purport, Prabhupada talks about the different kinds of vaishyas. The exchange of produce by banking and transportation is a branch of this type of living. The vaishyas is a type of living. So the vaishyas are divided in many subsections. The kshetri, the landowners, or krishana, or land tillers. When I read about that, I thought I have to be careful how I pronounce the Maha Mantra, or lest I be talking about a land tiller and not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he mentions the Gandhavanics, the Tilavanics, and then the Suvarnavanics, which I remember reading in the Prabhupada Lilamrita, that Prabhupada himself came from the Day family, which was very closely allied with the Mullik family in Calcutta, who were a very well-to-do family of Suvarnavanics. So they must have been merchants in gold and banking. And he describes his childhood as being very, very, very opulent in that way. The worship of the Radha Govinda in the temple across the street was going on very opulently at that time. And then the Brahmins are the teachers and spiritual masters. The Kshatriyas protect the citizens from the hands of thieves and miscreants. And Vaishyas are in charge of production and distribution. And then he says about the Shudras. The Shudras, the unintelligent class of men who cannot act independently in any of the above mentioned activities, are meant for serving the three higher classes for their livelihood. And like I was saying, contemporary education mostly aims at getting people to be employable, really to work in a factory setting, an industry of one sort or another. And society is not at all like, there's a purport in the second canto. The chapter is scheduled incarnations with specific functions, that describes how, at least for the three Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas, he describes how it was in Vedic times, before what we're told from the Western point of view is history. Prabhupada says the brahmachari, or boy from the age of 5 years, especially from the higher castes, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, is trained until 25 years of age under the care of a bona fide guru or teacher, and under strict observance of discipline he comes to understand the values of life, along with taking specific training for a livelihood. So that was also there. You get the Atma Tattva, and then you get whatever training you require based on your nature, so that you can make it in the world. The brahmachari is then allowed to go home and enter householder life and get married to a suitable woman. So that sort of training is just not happening here. And then he goes on to say about the different... he says that formerly the Brahmanas were given all the necessities of life by the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas because they had no time to spend making a living. I enjoyed reading that because I reminds me of, there's Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter, in the 4th and 5th verse, Prabhupada says something very similar in that purport. He says, thus charity is offered to the Brahmins because they are always engaged in higher spiritual service, have no time to earn their livelihood. And again in the CC I found that he lists the Brahminical qualifications, and truthfulness, control of the senses, transcendental knowledge, full faith. And it says, persons engaged in pursuing spiritual understanding have no time to earn their livelihood. They depend completely on the mercy of the Lord, who says in the Bhagavad Gita that he personally carries to them all their necessities, yoga kshema vahamyaham. And in today's purport, Prabhupada says that the Kshatriyas would collect taxes from the Vaishyas and Shudras, but the Brahmins were exempt from paying income tax or land revenue. Revenue means essentially property tax. Revenue, it means for the money to go back to the owner, but the Brahmins didn't have to do that. They were exempt. So what a nice society that must have been. Panchatattva Prabhu says, it's interesting to note that Srila Prabhupada is not rejecting small-scale industry per se. In fact, when the future Narada Muni began his wandering of the earth after his mother's passing, he passed by mines and other industries, just not enormous Ugra Karma industry like we have now. So that's from Bhagavatam 1.6.12. Yeah, I always thought that was interesting too, that all these things existed way back then, but in some kind of form that we imagine is very different from what we see now. Like, what does he say towards the end of the purport here? The system of human society was so nice that there were no political, social, and economic upheaval. I mean, Kali Yuga means upheaval of one kind or another. All we have in the bulk of history that we're taught in our schools is a history of what? Political, social, and economic upheavals. So, must have something to do with the nature of Kali that these things go on. But we're of course not taught about ancient Vedic history the way it's presented in the Puranas, the Itihasas, the Bhagavad Purana especially. Our collective memory of human society is pretty shallow. I mean, just like most people can't remember what was happening a week ago in their own lives, the global society, forget about it. We don't universally recognize the history of the human race, that at least the way it's presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Western historians don't even want to touch Indian history. It's too much to deal with. Saraswati Mata says, are those that are currently in the military classified as Kshatriyas if they display Shudra qualities? Some are very patriotic, but to identify oneself on the bodily platform, worshipping their country, etc., is not acting on true spiritual knowledge. Ravindra Swarup Prabhu once gave a class on these points, and I think we entitled that class, when we talk about Kshatriyas, we don't see Kshatriyas in the present day. What we now see are freaked out Shudras with guns. So, yes, Tulsi Priya mentions the same thing. Yeah, so no, those that are currently in the military, no, Kshatriya has to have a certain constellation of qualities. And those are all mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. You have to have fearlessness in battle. You have to have Aishwarya Bhava. You have to have the strong drive to protect others. You have to be, and it's very difficult to be that way when everybody is armed to the teeth with the latest automatic weapons, that no matter how brave or strong you are, it can just tear you to pieces in under a second. Just the fact that we have this sort of technology in entering into our warfare means that, real Kshatriyas, they may in fact be there, but it's very difficult to be a Kshatriya under those circumstances. The heads of nations are supposed to be the first people going into battle. That's not going to happen under the present circumstances. Prabhupada castigates modern leaders for that very reason, that people are hiding in underground bunkers while sending their freaked out Shudras into the fields and the deserts to duke it out with one another while the munitions companies profit from their duking. Tulsi Priya, is that a new hand or an old hand?
New hand.
Okay.
I was just remembering years ago, it was very popular, a series of novels about medieval Japan, Shogun. And I read one of the books and it was, very gripping. And I remember reading that, the samurai of that period, they had to learn things like flower arranging. They had to learn, they would write poetry, and they were absolutely, you know, if they did something wrong, they would just kill themselves. They didn't wait around to be punished. You know, it was like, and then you read in Western culture, you read about King Arthur. You know, I don't think he was a real king, but that goes back like 1500 years, you know, and there was the whole courtly love and the standards of knighthood, you know, and they were very religious and pious, and you know, so you know, you can't even imagine something like that with soldiers today. There's a very few that we see that are in high leadership positions that hint at that, but it's not the standard for being a soldier or a warrior nowadays. You know, it's just they scrape up from the bottom of the barrel because, you know, good people don't want to join, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in my own tiny experience, it has always seemed to me that members of the volunteer fire department in your local town are the ones who really seem to display kshatriya qualities, because they're coming in and protecting you and not even getting paid. They're just doing it because it's what they love to do. Panchatattva Prabhu, did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
Oh, I did. Your class is such a rich mine of ideas and insights that it's hard not to have one thought to the next.
Please add.
I was just thinking of how sense control for any of the varnas now, if we want to classify people that are acting as shudras, et cetera, but just the concept of controlling one's senses for a higher purpose is almost regarded as courting mental illness. You're supposed to cater to your desires to become happy. So there's no question of in that environment, there's no question of any of the varnas even getting along with each other, because everybody's after everything they can get. It's quite sad.
Yeah. It's a society of opportunists.
Yeah.
Whatever we can get away with. Well, our next verse number 33, has a very long purport, and it has to deal with the service function, which in this particular context refers to the Shudras. And I think we'll just let that wait until Wednesday, and hopefully Maharaj will be back on schedule, or else you can let me know if you'd like to be the one to speak on Wednesday. Love to hear from you. And I haven't heard from anyone yet as far as who might like to lead tonight's closing kirtan, but it's about time for tonight's closing kirtan. So if you have an inclination to lead us, we'd love to hear from you. Or
How about Krishna Kaunteya Prabhu?
I was thinking the same thing.
The last one I heard you lead was really sweet, Prabhu. It's time for another.
I agree.
You're on, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nita Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaur Hari Bo, Nita Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaur Hari Bo, Nita Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.
Hari Hari Bol, Jai. Thank you, Krishna Kaunteya Prabhu. Krishna Kaunteya Prabhu ki Jai.
Hey,
Srimad Bhagavatam
great.
ki Jai.
Hey,
Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
hey,
Jayādvaita Maharaj in Madrid ki Jai.
hey,
Ekendra Prabhu ki jai.
hey.
Jai.
Thank you everyone for being here tonight and continuing these classes even in Maharaj's absence. I know he really is, he appreciates that. And hopefully we'll see him again on Wednesday. And we'll see you again on Wednesday. So thank you so much. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories
Right.
to the devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thanks, Ekendra Prabhu. That was a very nice class.
Thank you so much.
Here, Kendra.
Jai, jai, jai.
I will continue to career through my life, careering in different directions. Trying to be vyavasayatmika buddhi, but still careering.